Hi, this is Lisanne Miller from W Cushing Company in Wells, Maine. A little balmy today. It's about 98 degrees here. And this is our Christmas in July video. We're going to be going over this Santa Claus and how to hook this Santa Claus's face. This is a rebroadcast of our earlier video. We had trouble with the bandwidth on Facebook, so this video is not live, but we will be able to answer any questions you may have. I want to thank Rug Hooking Magazine for the ability to reshoot this video, and hopefully this one will be clearer and you can play it at your convenience. So we're going to get ready and we're going to get started. With Santa, I have found that everybody has a personal view of what Santa should look like. So I'm going to start here with the hat. Some people want a red hat. Some people want green. There is one person I know that if it's not blue, Santa is always blue from her household. So here are some of our options for the hat. The options for the hat are all of these reds here. This is a bright red. These are vintage reds. This is jam cupboard, and this is a real vintage brick red. This is a reversible. This is Swedish fish. And this is Christmas in July plaid, which I used on the example that we are going to show and work on later on in this video. For greens, here are some great greens. This one is reversible. And here's a beautiful Cloud 9 blue. Now, some people want a richer look to their paisley, to their Santa, sorry, and they use paisley. So here's the paisley, and I used paisley in this Santa. I wanted a vintage old world look. So any of these paisleys would work just fine. You can cut them on your cutter. They're 100% wool. Cut them on an 8. Don't cut them on a 6. And that will give you this look. So here we go next to the fur cuff on the Santa. Now, that a great yarn to use. Now, you can use any white wool or off-white wool or cream wool, and you could actually sculpt it. Or for a different look, here is the Burley Spun Yarns, and this is what I'm going to show you in the example I just hooked. And here's a cream color. Some people like it as white. That goes really great. And also so does the cream for a more vintage look. You can use any type of wool. You could use the gray for the cuff, even the chocolate for the cuff, especially if you did a green or a red. This is a great cuff of his hat as well. Okay, this would work very well. This piece, Lights and Shadows, comes into play in a few other areas as well. So it depends upon what kind of look you want for your Santa. And in our tool, as a rug hooker, we have 4 tools: the size of the cut, the height of the loop, tone and value, and direction of hooking. And all of those are going to come into play today, especially height of hook, size of cut, and direction in order to create a great looking Santa. Tone and value, we use tone and value because texture has a tone and a value. Embellishments like the wool have a tone and a value. And how we hook it. Are we hooking it outline and fill, higgly wiggly? What do we want to do, or how do we want to do it to get the look we want? Okay? So the beard is very important, and you're going to find out something very interesting. I hook the face last. Yes, last. The reason I hook the face last is because I don't know what I'm going to put around the face. So this way I don't have to try and match Santa's hair to his face. I have to match the face to what I've picked for his beard and hair. I like, this one is a more of a beigey look, and I actually used this wool for this with a dark brown texture to give the direction. And I sculpted the mustache and the eyebrows. So I have more of an older look, a worn look, not crisp and clean like white or gray, but some other options for Santa's beard. These 2 would work very, very well. Also, seeds would work for the line because it would give you a distinct line. Stone wall is very interesting for it if you want a real primitive Santa. Stone wall works very well because you can make your wool do the work, by cutting this piece out and using this for the highlights and the lines. That would work very, very well for a real vintage look. This burly spun yarn right here, with all of its variations, would also work exceedingly well for a beard. You could just pull and hook this. Now the burly spun hooks on a number 6 cut. It hooks like a number 6. It is tightly spun. It works very well and very nicely to do. This also has lights and darks in it, but it is a herringbone. Okay, so since it's a herringbone, it's a little more muted and you would need another color to go with it. And another great color to go with it is this right here. Okay, then there is fishbones here if you like a little blue. And fishbones is also a herringbone but a stripe, so you actually could make an awesome beard with this. In the new one that I hooked, I actually used this as the base of my beard. This is a dapple gray, and I really like the way this hooks. It hooks a lot different than it looks. And then I used another texture called Kingsman for the fill-in. I didn't want it as delineated as this, so it depends. If you want it muted, you go more into the same value. If you want it to be delineated a little more, you use the medium, dark, and light. And that's your tone and values. Now, for an accent line, this is silk dyed wool. And here are some grays that would work perfectly in and amongst the other grays. And the little bit of sheen and texture gives it a pop. And that would be a really great accent for the Santa beard as well. Now this is a little bit of black and white, but if you wanted the curls to be as delineated as this would be a great silk dyed wool for you to use. So we've talked about Santa's beard, we've talked about the hat, the cuff, and what I do is whatever is in his beard I use for his mustache and his eyebrows. And by using the height of the loop and sculpting it, I create the mustache and the eyebrows so that they blend in and don't fight. These are some green silk dyed wools, okay? And some green silk dyed wools that if you want a more modern Santa Claus, you could use. Now, over here is Here Comes Santa. And Here Comes Santa I did in traditional red. That's more of my taste. And these are actually 2 of our dyed wools combined, and this is a size 6 cut and a size 8 cut. This is the burly spun white, and this is our garnet and our vintage paisley red combined to create the lights and darks. So I used it on the hat, I used the burly spun. Now in his mustache, I did sculpt his mustache and I did sculpt his eyebrows, and in his beard, I used just a cream colored wool and then this texture to create definition. So the lines in here cut in a 4, so it's a smaller cut and not a lot of the texture shows, created the dimension into this beard. And in this beard, it's not curly-Q, they're more of straight lines. Now, the rule is whatever you put in first in hooking will recede. So I put in these lines first, then hook the fill-in so that they recede and aren't on top. If I wanted them more predominant, I would have hooked them last. So by hooking them first, they become part of the beard. And then the belt is our reversible black. We updated the teddy bear from Jones. This is all done in yarns. And the buttons and the jingle bell are sculpted. So that is Here Comes Santa. And now we're going to talk about Santa's face. And Santa's face is really fun when it's done correctly. Now, in this pattern that I've hooked already, this is Christmas in July plaid. It is cut in an 8. I did not separate the darks from the lights. I just put it in a pile and pulled and hooked. It does resemble paisley. It has an older look, a darker look. This is our burley spun yarn hooked. Now, for those of you that like to pack, and I won't mention any names, you have to pack this. And it is not an outline and fill like you would think. This is where direction of hooking comes into play. You take little pieces and you hook them, and they have to be packed pretty tight. And that creates the look of the fur. Here is his beard, and as I said before, this is my curlicues cut in an 8. I wanted the texture to show, and if you notice, I want it to recede a little bit, so I've put them in first. So here is all of the curlicues. Okay, now my fill-in, I wanted a fill-in that blended. So this is Dapple Gray, this is Kingsman, and I use the Kingsman to fill in. Now I cut the Kingsman in a 6, so I'm using the size of my cut to make the blend and to be effective. So here it is all filled in already. Now this side was cut in the first video that didn't work, and we sculpted it. These are done in this wool in an 8. Because I want the texture to come out, I want it to look like a gray mustache and a gray eyebrow. So they're hooked high, they're packed tight. I wish everybody could come and make a squeeze and feel this, but you can tell these are really packed. So the height of our hooking on this is what's going to play in to the mustache and into the eyebrows. Now this is not Waldoboro. If this was Waldoboro, it would be in a smaller cut and I would have a toothpick. And if I could put a toothpick through, then I would have to put more wool. This is sculpted, not Waldoboro. And this pattern, by the way, is called Ho Ho Ho. I know a lot of you asked about it, and I neglected to say the name the first time around. We call him Ho Ho Ho. So, we have our mustache, we have our eyebrows. I'm going to trim them up so he doesn't look like Walter Cronkite or Andy Rooney in a few minutes. And we pick our flesh. And over here is the flesh bucket. God forbid CSI ever comes in here, it's labeled flesh, and as I find pieces that would go, I put them in the flesh bucket. And it looks a little fuller than last time because I was dyeing my secret flesh formula. My secret flesh formula is very, very simple. When I have the exhaust of my reds or my reds and oranges in my dye pan, I throw in cream and white. And I get a mottled look such as this from the exhaust. And this allows me to have all different tones, as you can see, in one place for one selection. And this is the best way to ensure you have enough of the tones and values. So we have everything from maybe a suntan Santa all the way down to the correct choices. But they'll be used for something. And when you have a selection like this, you can instantly put it over here and see if it's too light, probably just right or a little bit lighter, and you can keep going with it. If you pick your flesh tones first and you hook in a certain direction, we've all seen the Santa Clauses that look like they have apricots for cheeks. Most likely they have hooked the Santa face first and tried to match to it. But by doing it this way, the flesh tones go with the Santa and we don't have the apricot cheeks, or as I like to say, that's what it would look like when I put on blush. So, what we do and what we have picked so far is I like a little sparkle once in a while. So his cheeks are from this piece of wool. There's all different values. There's a little gray in there, which does help. And I've cut those in a 6, and they will go into his cheek, as you can tell here. Now, I did not hook the cheek round and round. I hooked it in half moon pieces. And you can also hand cut your glitter so that you want a wider cut so the glitter will come out. To delineate all of his nose and the cheeks, we're going to use this piece of wool. And this piece of wool is lights and shadows that I showed earlier, dyed with some exhaustive red. So here are his cheeks, here is the outline. And I picked this for the flesh to fill in. It's a little bright. We may use some other little pieces with it, but this is what we're going to basically base the flesh on. Now, Santa's eyes can be a myriad of blues. And everything from a Copenhagen blue to a robin's egg blue to any kind of blue you would like. And this happens to be my favorite blue, which is azure blue, and I am going to put that up there. But any of these would go. They have to go with everything you have in place so that his eyes don't look beady. We can't have a mean-looking Santa. Now, instead of outlining his eyes in black, which is very, very harsh, I like to outline them in a dark brown, or even a honey brown would work. So here are all the different browns that you can collect, and I like the dark brown because it really makes an outline without having to use black. Okay, and of course a little white in there and in there, which always works very well. Now, I'm going to lean down because I dropped my dark brown down here. And here is a chocolate brown, okay? And then here is a medium brown. So any of these browns would go. It's a personal choice. And that's what we used before, so we'll use that again. And the chocolate brown gives it a less defined than the darker brown, as you can see up here. So let's start. We have everything up on our frame, and I am using the small applique scissors to trim. I'm not using the long ones because we don't want to cut our linen. And unlike your bangs, once you cut too much, they don't grow back. And having cut too much one time, you have to take your burling iron or your tweezers and get this all out, so we don't want to cut too much. So this is what I cut first. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to cut this out. Now I'm not going to go and open every loop. This is sculpting, not Waldoboro. So I'm going to take this just like this and cut. And I'm going to cut this just like this. And these are the new higher density wools, so they're a little bit thicker, so they fill in very nicely. They really fill in for sculpting. They're thicker. They fill in the space easier. They make it a more uniform look, and you actually use less wool. I know we're cutting this, and as you can see, I'm going to try and get my other hand out of the way, and I'm going to cut. And so I'm just grabbing pieces of this, and I'm cutting it up, just like this. And once I've cut it all, okay, I'm getting there where we're cutting it, I'm going to then shape it. Notice I didn't say sculpt. I'm going to shape it. And by shaping it, then it allows us to hook the face. So here we are. Get this out of the way. And there's still a few loops open. Okay, so now I want to shape it. And now I'm going to put my hand underneath. I'm going to push on it so it comes up. This will guarantee 9 times out of 10, unless you're using huge scissors, that you don't cut your linen. And I'm cutting it on an angle, if you notice. And it's being cut on an angle this way so that it is easier. And so that the sculpting is there. There we go. And then you take it out into the yard and shake it, and some birds will use it for their nest. Don't drop it on the floor because then you have to vacuum it all up. And if you don't do the vacuuming and somebody else does, they may not appreciate that. So here we are. And he is sculpted. And I'll probably go in and fine-tune him later. It's one of these things that you keep looking at and keep thinking a little bit here, a little bit there, and everything will be fine. Now, here's his eyebrow. Right now he looks like Walter Cronkite. So we're going to take and we're going to trim it. And I know some people think that this technique wastes wool, but with the higher density wools, you don't use as much. So I'm going to grab this by the hunk like that, and I'm just going at it to open it up. I'm not too concerned. I don't want to cut it too far down, but I also don't want to leave any unopened. And it takes too long of a time to go loop by loop because that's not really as important in this technique. In Waldeboro, it's a little more time consuming, but it's also more important to get every loop open before you sculpt. So here we are. And I'm making sure that his eyebrow is above. I wanted his eyebrow to be predominant on this side because he's not straight on. So I wanted it above the cuff. So I wanted it a little bit higher, and here we go, height of loop to create an effect, another tool in our tool belt. So there we are. So he no longer looks like, well, maybe a little like Walter Cronkite, but definitely not Andy Rooney. Trust me, I know knew Andy Rooney very well, so his eyebrows could hit you 5 miles out. There we go. So now we've got that in, we've got the color in, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to hook the gray line around the cheek. Okay, and this is lights and shadows, and I've done it in the leftover dye from a red pot, most likely from when we dye garnet or vintage paisley. And I'm going to put it in. And with the cheek, you don't want to outline it entirely. You don't want to create a complete circle. You give the illusion of a circle, but not a complete circle. Again, if you do, that's where we get the look like apricots. So we've cut that there. And then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to put this one in. And these are cut in a 4. These I want to recede, and I want them to be there but not be predominant. So they are cut in a 4. Now I'm going to go right in. I don't have to go around because I have the sculpted mustache, but I'm going to stop it right there in the half circle of the mustache. And then I'm going to trim it. So now I've outlined that, and I don't need to outline right now under his eye. So I'm going to go next to his cheek. And when I hook the cheek, I'm going to start in the corner, and you can see the glitter because I've cut it in a bigger cut. And I'm going to go this way with it. Now the other side I did hand cut, so it's a little bit wider, and I may take that out and redo it in a smaller cut. But here we go. And I'm not too worried about making it a circle, as you can tell. I'm not too worried about the loops being in perfect order, because once we put the eye in, it will push everything down. And I will finish him up at another point in time, and we'll post his we'll post the finished picture on Rug Hooking Magazine's Facebook page and also on our Facebook page, so you can see it. And see, I'm only going in half circles here, and by doing that, I'm creating a roundness, but it's not completely round. It's more of a U. And then this would go till it's filled in. And I'm hiding my tails so they're not all in the same spot. And there we are. And then we'll go to the eye. Now, why I put the cheeks in before I hook the eye is very important. I need the eye to be in the right place based on the cheek. I know most people would probably have done the eye first, then put in the cheek. But if you put in the cheek, you won't make the eye too large. You'll make the eye in the right pattern that it's supposed to be. And then this is just about done, as you can see. And I'm going to pull up a big loop here, right in here, and cut all of them. Now, when you want to, I have almost 3 tails in a row. And in the cheek, it's not going to matter. This is not something for the floor. So what I do when I want to hide 3 tails in a row is I will cut. I won't cut across, I will cut down at an angle. And by cutting down at an angle like that, and then cutting down at an angle again, the end works into the loops, so you don't see all the ends. So next thing I'm going to do is take my brown and fill in my brown, just like this. And he's going to have a nice looking eyeliner for a little bit. And this will set up the shape of the eye. So this is really what sets the eye shape. And it's easy to do. It's easy to see if it's right or wrong right away. And that's in. This is going to come over here like that. And then I need one more piece. And I'm going to do the circle right in his eye. It's another shape very similar to his cheek, but just a tad smaller. And that, by not making it completely round, allows another softer look. And that softer look starts to take shape right now, as you can tell. So even before we put anything else around him, he already has a nice look. He's not going to be a mean Santa. We don't want a mean Santa. Now I'm going to put the blue around. Just like this. And again, I'm going in half moons, half circles, whatever you'd like to call them. Okay? And I'm packing it in a little bit. Those that like to pack, you're going to love this pattern, because there's lots of opportunity to pack in here. Just like that. Now, you can finish Ho 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 off as I did as an individual Santa head, and I put him in a wreath. Or you can make him into a pillow and make him square. By doing that, or you can frame him, make him square and frame him. And we'll show, when I finish this one, we will show another one that was done by Dorinda Pizzone, and she did it as a square, not as a pillow, and she had it framed, which looks very, very lovely. And you can use, if you do a red Santa, a green background, or vice versa. So there's his blue, which is now, you can see immediately is a little too much blue. So watch what happens when I take it down a little bit, and I come back and I just fill this in. I want you to see what it looks like when it's overfilled, because a lot of people tend to overfill the eyes. Now it's going to be filled correctly, and right up into here, and we're done. So this is filled correctly. Okay? So he still looks good. He doesn't look bug-eyed yet. Everything's looking pretty good with it. And then we've got to put a little bit of the white in. And for that, we're going to come in here and do this in here. Just like this. He has very little white in this side of the eye. And we actually just very barely put it in. So it's there in a little triangle. We go over here, just like that. Now you can use cream, you can use bright white, you can use anything you want. But the magic comes next. And then when I get over here, I do them in little it's like a little triangle. Again, the direction of the hooking, okay? Now, why I did this is so you have two options, because there were some questions last time and I wanted to show it in two different ways, and I will correct it when I finish. Somebody asked, does it have to be done in white? No, it does not. Here it is done in white, and here it is done in a really, really pale pink. So it's up to you. Either one look great. And it's just the difference that you want. But somebody asked, does it have to be white? And no, it does not have to be white. Now I'm using my outline that I did, this wool right over here, and I'm putting it right under the eye for definition so it doesn't get lost. We don't want Santa to have lost eyes. So there is his eye, and it is done. But again, it does not have to be white. It can be off-white, it can be cream, or it can be the pale pink, just like this one. This is a much softer look. This is a more traditional look. So that is up to you on how you see your Santa. Now, we are going to put the glint in Santa's eye, and we are going to use needlepoint thread called Arctic Rays. And we're going to pick the white. You could also pick the silver and hook a little bit at the end into his beard if you so chose, just to look like he's got a little snow. So the Arctic Ray is a needlepoint thread. We're going to cut a piece off of it. And we're going to use our hook, and I'm going to come up with it on one tail one side and one tail the other. And I am going to even it out. There it is. And I'm going to cut and tie. So I'm tying knots right now until I get above my hooking. Above it, not even with it, above it. So right there, I'm above my hooking, and I am going to trim it on each end, just like that. Going to take the point of my scissors, and I'm going to put it in there for the glint, so he has a twinkle in his eye. And there you are. Now, to hook with it, you always put this in after it's steamed, because it is acrylic. And you can just wedge these in, and they will burn. Trust me, that's the voice of experience talking. And you can put these in just a little bit in between your loops, and you can get just a little effect of glitter for those that like it, or a little snow on his beard. And it really does add a little something. And again, it's the size and the tone and the value that we're using to create it. So all that's left is to fill in the Santa face, and up top you always fill it in a little darker with the flesh. And if you notice, I'm going right by where the eyebrows are. That's where I start filling in, so that it can be filled in nicely. And then this way you don't forget to do it. The last thing that I do on this pattern, and we'll do on this pattern, is Santa's lips. And I've left a little space in here for them, and I'll just put 2 or 3 little loops of red if I do that at all. On this one I may not. It just depends upon what you'd like to do. We put a little flesh tone on this one to show his lips because his finger was there. But you really sometimes don't even have to. We don't make them too predominant, so they're one of the last things that we put in. So I will clean up this Santa and post it when it's done. We are going to post this video on Rug Hooking Magazine's page, and I will be answering any questions you have. You can post questions and do that. So here we are in Wells, Maine. Almost 92 degrees, 98 degrees with the humidity, but we're hooking Santa, getting ready for Christmas. Thank you all, and thank Rug Hooking Magazine for this opportunity. Have a great day.